So if you already didn't know, this is a bow I'm shooting tonight. It's a 54-inch Black Widow KBX. I shoot it at 44 pounds at 26-inch draw. And then this is my arrow setup I've been using for about a year now. They're a 500 spine. I wanted to go with the 500. I could have chose either 500 or 600 depending on the actual arrow length. And then front weight, I always pretty much do 275 up front. So I chose this spine and this arrow length because it gave a 500 stiffer than a 600, so it gave me a longer arrow, which means I'll have a closer point on. So this setup, I have it for whitetail. So typically I like to have my shots about 20 yards. So, you know, I'm trying to get a point on that's really close to 20 yards. And I'm gonna go over my gaps. I'm just gonna double check them. I like to write down my gaps just so it's easy to remember them. I always carry this field book with me. And what I do in this book is just write down any notes. And then I also I always write down my goals. And then here's a page of notes I have, my shot sequence. So like important things to always remember that I like to remember is having my front shoulder down, anchoring to my back of my jawline. I should add that in there. Remember set shoulders, bow arm up, then draw, reduce lean. So kind of just writing down notes as I go. I also like to, so this is like a 3D shoot, kind of my goals for that particular shoot. And then I also like to write down my actual arrow setups as well. That's super helpful just because I have so many different setups for like different poundages or different situations like elk or whatever. So what I'll do is I'll go to a new page and write down my gaps.
No.
So I'm aiming here. Well, I'm trying to hit this, so I'm a little low, but I'm gonna just kind of keep track of how low I'm aiming. So that's the first group. Okay, so I'm aiming about right here for 20. So say that's about 4 inches below it. So now what I'll do is I'll take my notebook and get my pen. So I'll take my notebook. And I like to start at 20 for my baseline. 20 is just a good baseline because that's kind of where I want to shoot deer. It's about the perfect yardage. So after I shoot 20 yards a lot and I know exactly where my gap's gonna be, I'm gonna write in there 4 inches below just for a mental note. Now I like to try to find my point on, which I know it's somewhere around 22, 23. It's going to be probably 23, 24 point on, but I'm going to do these 3 yardages now, start at 23, and kind of go from there. Alright, so there's 23. I was shooting a little bit right. Whoops, I was shooting a bit right, but the elevation's perfect. So 23 is part of my point on. Of course, you want to shoot that a few times to be sure, but I know from experience 23 is my point on from shooting this bow. So for 23, I'll write point on. Now I want to go to 24, see if I aim with my point where it lands, which I believe it'll be pretty close, so that'll be good. Here's 24, which this shot was not good, and this shot was not great. This shot felt good, but I definitely need to reshoot this, and of course as you get further back you'll want to shoot as many as possible to make sure you're getting the correct gaps. This shot was my last one. Wasn't great. These two are really good shots, both feeling and they impacted well. So 24 is part of my point on as well. I'm gonna write point on for this as well. Now I'm gonna try 22, see what that's like when I use point on there as well. So aiming with point on right here, there's 22. It's gonna hit above, which makes sense. So I'll shoot a couple more times and then I'll write it in my notebook. Okay, so there's 22 aiming below the spot. So I am like just below the spot. Put tip of my arrow about right here. So 20 was about right here. 22 is about here. 23 is point on. 24 is point on. So there's not a whole lot of difference in that 20 to 24 yard gap, which is awesome. That's kind of why I chose this arrow spine to get this length of arrow. So it's working out really perfect. So now in my notebook, this is kind of where you can customize a little bit. So for 22 yards, I'm gonna say about 2 inch below, which it's not super precise just because your field point is a certain size. That's like when the field point covers at 23 and 24, that's why these are the same, because it's such a big spot. It's not super precise, but so 2 below, I'm gonna put just below. That'll kind of remind me that 22, I can just barely see what I want to hit, and then should hit perfect. So that means 21. I do actually want to shoot that, but I mean, gosh, if you want to be super precise, it's probably going to be about 3 inches below. But honestly, I could probably aim 2 inches below, and it's going to be 3 to 4 inches below, and it's going to be perfect there. So I'll come back to that one. I want to do 25 next. So there's 25, and this time I did point on at 25 just because I like to start out by seeing where it's going to land with the point on, since I'm near my point on. So now what I'll do is I'll try to aim like 2 inches above, and that should be about perfect for that. So that's 25, aiming about 2 inches above. Once you start aiming above your spots, it's pretty difficult to tell exactly where you're at, just because you're covering up exactly what you're trying to shoot at. But the important part is this is just telling me my distance gap, and then I want to actually shoot a deer target, and I'll know like 25 yards I'll aim like the upper third to hit, you know, heart shot, or you know, wherever you want to hit. So it's important to shoot a deer target after this, but we're just getting data right now. So on this 25 yards, I'm gonna put 2 inches above, just above. It's just kind of a good reminder for when I'm looking at my gaps. 25, I'm thinking just above it. 22 yards just below it. 23, 24, point on. And then my baseline 20 is about 4 inches below, so I think like about one of my fletchings below. So kind of works out really well. So hunting, I really don't want to shoot past 25 just because 25 is kind of a poke depending on the situation with whitetail. So now my other important yardage to me is 15 yards. I don't really like shooting 10 yards from a tree stand just because it's such a close shot and it's such a steep angle. So my yardages I like to really pay attention to is 15, 20, and then my point on, and then also 25 because that's kind of my max. So once I get all these, what I'll really focus on is 20, point on, 25, and then 15. So now I'm gonna try 15. So here's 15. I'm just above it and I'm aiming about right here. So probably do need to aim, I mean that's so close, but you know, maybe a little bit lower. So what is that? Maybe like 10 inches. I mean, you can always measure it, but I'm kind of looking at my calf hair rest. The top of it, my calf hair rest, if I had like my calf hair rest level with what I want to hit at, is typically 10 yards. So I'm aiming with it, the top of my calf hair rest on my shelf, a little bit of it. So that's kind of how I'm going off of that. That's a little bit easier since it is such a large gap. I'm kind of going off of my riser rather than, you know, saying 10 to 12 inches low or whatever. So there's that. So I'm gonna write actual measurements. So I got a tape measure, but so it's hitting about right here, aiming about right here. So yeah, so it's about 9 inches. So what I'm probably, 15 yards is probably actually about 10 inches. I'm gonna say 10 inches below at 15 just for an actual measurement in my notebook. And then of course you want to shoot it multiple times. So 15 is actually 10 inches below, or yeah, 10 inches below. And then I'm gonna put, well, I'm not gonna put that. I wanted to reference my calf hair rest, which I should, but I don't know how to say it exactly yet. 10 yards, I believe it's about level with my calf hair rest, so I'm gonna check that real quick. When I'm talking about my aiming with my calf hair rest, this is what I'm talking about. So when I'm at full draw, it doesn't look exactly like that obviously, but 10 yards, if I remember correctly, was about level with this. So when I'm aiming, I just kind of put it level with what I want to hit. 15 was about right here. So maybe I'll say like quarter inch, reference the calf hair rest like a quarter inch below the top of it or something like that, just for a memory in my book, so I can always reference it. Alright, so there's 10, and it's right on the money. It was correct, so I'm going to reference the calf hair rest on this one. So, top of calf hair rest. My handwriting's terrible. I like to do custom references with these bigger gaps just because it's easier for me to visualize rather than thinking like 12 inches below or whatever. So I'll always remember 10 yards is top of calf hair rest. That's really easy. And then you just have to align your left and right with the point, obviously, so you can put the point on the spot you want to hit, go straight down to calf hair, top of it, execute your shot. That's perfect there. And then of course, like if I was to shoot 10 yards out of a tree stand, that's probably going to change a little bit since you're shooting at a downward angle. But 10 yards like in a ground blind, that's going to be perfect for that. And then 15 yards, I got that. 13, I can always come back for that. And then the other important yardages are 17 through 19, of course. So I'll just go through the rest of the night and kind of just fill these in, make sure I'm putting plenty of groups together, good shots, and putting accurate information. And then I also, 26 to 30, I like to just know those. You never know if you'll have a follow-up shot or someone challenges you at 30 yards. You want to be ready for that. So I'll do those for fun, but those aren't important right now. So my main focus are these. I'll always double check these. And if I'm ever going to a shoot, or if I'm sitting in my tree stand, I could just open up my book, kind of go over my gaps, and just be ready. So it's kind of an awesome way to do it. And once you write it down, it's just easier to remember. So I hope that was helpful for trad log number 3.